Great to see everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hello, and for those who just walked in, we do have coffee and tea and water in the back of the room, so please help yourself. But want to, use this. Just want to use this opportunity to say a few words and welcome all you to our briefing on our 2018 Cost of Child Care report. So I'm Jay Nichols. I am the Director of Federal Policy and Governmental Affairs at Child Care Resource Referral. Joining us this morning is our Executive Director, Dr. Unaffordable, our Senior Director of Research, Deanne Dobbins, and our very devoted parent advocate, Jess, who will be speaking momentarily. I just want to again welcome all of you to our briefing on the U.S. and the high cost of child care, a review of prices and proposed solutions to a broken system. Before we begin, I would actually just like to say a few words about our organization itself, kind of the history of this annual report and how it ties into the national discussion on access to high quality and affordable care, as well as how it relates to not only past elections, but this one as well. First and foremost, I speak for everybody at Child Care Resource Referral. We extend our deepest gratitude to Senator Patty Murray and her staff for their assistance in the planning of today's event. We remain even more grateful for the Senator's continued commitment to early childhood education and child care issues. And as well, in particular, we applaud the Senator and her staff's leadership in securing the largest discretionary funding increase for one of the most critical child care programs in the country, the Child Care Development Block Grant, earlier this year. And I know there's many of our fellow advocates in attendance today, and we always appreciate our work with you as well. Chances of success are better when you have a strong team. And so again, welcome to all of you. Here at Child Care Resource America, we have worked and established and worked very strong bipartisan relationships with both federal and state lawmakers, as well as numerous Republican and Democratic presidential administrations. Our mission aligns with our network of members and advocates, most notably the Child Care Resource Referral agencies, or CCR&R. Now, what is a CCR&R? Well, they serve as a nationwide system with touch points at the local, state, and national levels. They support families by helping them navigate the complicated child care system, and they conduct initiatives that increase the quality, affordability, and accessibility of child care. Today, there's over 400 CCR&Rs spread throughout the country, and their work is not only critical in assisting families finding quality care, but also the ability to collect data. Now, that data is what helps paint the national picture of the child care landscape. In particular, it showcases the high cost of care and highlights the barriers to access of care, including both economic, geographic, and racial. And this data, of course, here at Child Care Resource America is what we rely on heavily in order for us to produce our reports to the public. Now, for over 10 years, Child Care Resource America has provided annual reporting detailing the high cost of child care, as well as details on millions of families who lack access to it. As our 2000 report details, the monthly cost of child care for a medium income household exceeds that of a mortgage, food, transportation, and/or gas needs. In addition, in more than half the states in the country, child care, 1 year of child care costs more for a toddler than it would be for a parent to send their 18-year-old son or daughter to a public college. So therefore, child care remains unaffordable for millions of families. And while the cost remains high, it's also very important to mention that the child care workforce remains undersupported with a lack of adequate funding and educational opportunities, and most importantly, the lack of a livable wage. In 2017, the average hourly wage for a child care worker was $10.72, and their annual earnings are not enough to cover the cost of care for their own children. Not only are parents in the child care workforce being shortchanged by an under-supported system, but the children themselves suffer from it. Now, there are many young children who are exposed to unsafe, unhealthy care. And while improvements have been made in recent years, we still read about, we either read about it or we see news reports on television, far too many cases of tragedies in child care settings. And while exposure to unsafe care remains a top concern, we must also remember there are millions of children who don't have access to care at all. This for a number of reasons, including lack of programming and This is for a number of reasons, including lack of programs in urban and rural communities, obviously high costs, and economic reasons such as a parent's work schedule. And so these barriers impact the child, the parent, and the workforce, but most notably it impacts the economy. On an annual basis, billions of dollars in wages are lost due to the lack of affordable care, and many times parents have had to reduce their hours or even quit their jobs. In addition, the U.S. remains the only developed country in the world without a public financing system for paid family leave. And as we are all aware, especially I know of many of our advocates in this room, the first few years of a child's life is the most critical, as over 90% of the brain develops by the time they begin school. So therefore, access to high quality care is critical during this time period. Unfortunately, this country hasn't done enough to support it. Now there is good news over the last few years, as both Republicans and Democrats have recognized the importance on investing and supporting child care programs. Obviously, as I mentioned a moment ago, earlier this year, Congress and the administration reached a bipartisan deal that provided nearly $5.8 billion in new child care funding between now and September of 2019. In addition, in 2016, both the Republican and Democratic nominees for president included expanding access to child care in their party platforms. I should even say they prioritized it. Even more impressive, we found that an overwhelming majority of voters who supported both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton wanted the federal government to do more to raise the quality of child care and make it more affordable. And as I mentioned, there have been significant bipartisan legislative victories as well, including the biggest discretionary funding increase in child care's history, but also the 2014 reauthorization of the Child Care and Development Block Grant, which helped to expand, not only expand access to care, but take steps to ensure that it is safe for children, as well as give parents and caregivers maximum options in finding the care that best suits them. And so today, today's report is obviously going to provide a significant amount of information on how lack of access to child care and the high cost of it impacts both the family and the economy. And again, just want to thank all of you for joining us today. And with that, I would actually like to introduce, want to use this opportunity as a segue into introducing our Executive Director, Dr. Lynette Fraga. Dr. Fraga is a passionate practitioner, advocate, and leader in the field of child care and early learning, working to advance the accessibility of quality care experiences for all children. She has over 25 years experience as an educator, a program director, and executive leader work on behalf of children and families. Since her selection in 2012 as the Executive Director of Child Care Resource Referral, Dr. Fraga has sought to position Child Care Resource Referral as the nation's leading voice on child care policy, practice, and research. As an authority on child development, Dr. Fraga serves in an advisory capacity on a number of national panels and committees, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, Council on Early Learning, the Institute of Medicine Early Care and Education Force, and the Early Care and Education Innovation Collaborative. In addition, she serves on the boards of Generations United, whose mission is to improve the lives of children and youth and older people through intergenerational collaboration policies and programs. All Our Kin, an organization that trains, supports, and sustains community child care providers to ensure that children and families have the foundation they need to succeed in school and life, and the Permanent Fund for Vermont's Children, whose mission is to ensure that by 2025, every Vermont family has affordable access to high-quality care in a self-sustaining system. She is also the chair of the Children's Leadership Council, a coalition of 55 leading national organizations together to improve the health, education, and well-being of children and youth. Dr. Fraga began her career in early childhood as a teacher in infant, toddler, and preschool classrooms, and subsequently worked in the military child care system as a center director, training and curriculum specialist, and school-age coordinator. She has held positions at the local, state, and national level within the nonprofit, corporate, and higher education sectors. And prior to Child Care Resource Referral, Dr. Fraga served as Vice President of Early Care and Special Populations for CARE, where she led development of public-private partnerships to support the corporation's services for children with special needs and a lifespan of care options for military-connected families. During her 11 years at 0 to 3, a national nonprofit working to promote the healthy development of babies and toddlers. Dr. Fraga was the Chief Program Officer and led the development of and oversaw all programmatic activities. An expert of the social and emotional needs of infants and toddlers, she spearheaded the Military Family Project and directed and held several partnership roles within the Early Head Start National Resource Center at 03. Dr. Fraga holds a doctoral degree in family studies from Kansas State University, a master's degree in human relations from the University of Oklahoma, and a bachelor's degree in special education from the University of Arizona. So please welcome her today, this morning.
Okay, that was a lot. That was a mouthful. So glad to be here today. I'm really excited about this new report that you're releasing. We've been doing this report for quite a while, and it's an important one. You'll hear a little bit today, and I'll share a little bit towards the end of my comments about the importance of this particular report. But so appreciate, given time, that the time that you have with us today is critically important for you. So I hope that you are able to sort of garner the importance of this particular report and its message from today's presentation. So Jay spoke a little bit about Child Care Aware of America and who we are and what we do. For over 30 years, Child Care Aware of America has been a critical leader in the child care space and in the movement to ensure that all children and families have access to high quality, affordable child care for their children. More than 11 million children right now are in child care. They're in some setting across the country, and their parents are concerned about their health and well-being. So for working families who are unable to access child care becomes not a choice for them, and that's really tough for too many. Another stark reality for families is the unaffordability and the lack of access and quality. It's completely unaffordable, as per our report, in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. So for all families, no matter where you live, really are struggling with how do I find a safe, nurturing space for my child to grow and to thrive. This past year, in fact, the past several months, past several weeks, I've had the honor, privilege, and opportunity to travel across the country and speak with individuals who really care about this work. I've had the opportunity to speak with parents, with providers of care, with those agencies and organizations that Jay spoke about who work each and every day, the Child Care Resource and Referral agencies, to try and create and support an infrastructure and system. These are our members. These are individuals who each and every day try and figure out how do we create supply, access, and affordability solutions for parents. How do we do the best for our nation's children? And what's clear from all of the voices that I've heard from Alaska to New Jersey, Virginia, and so forth, is the desire to do the best we can for our children, and to really address the struggle they experience each and every day to accomplish this goal. At the heart of the community are these agencies who grapple with these issues that are laid out in the report. So dig into the words, not only the statistics, because the stories are really critically important. These issues they're grappling with are access to quality, non-standard hours of care, wages for early childhood educators, the very low wages for early childhood educators, and them trying to create some sort of a business case that keeps them afloat to do the work that they love for children and families. Investing in child care is not only an economic issue, it is a child development issue. Children thrive in quality spaces, and families are less stressed when they can afford that, when they don't have to worry about their children being in unsafe care. They can focus on the work at hand while they're at work. Some families have experienced unspeakable tragedy and loss in unsafe, unregulated child care and have successfully changed laws, advocated for changing laws to keep other children safe Many parents are students and seek affordable childcare that operates outside of traditional hours to accommodate their class schedules as they're trying to better their children's lives. Parents of children with special needs can't find critical services they can afford, if they can find those services at all. Many providers, as I've heard from my visits, struggle with managing their own programs, the time that it takes and the money to do what they want to do for children and families. But the resources in the system aren't allowing for it. And importantly, the high cost of childcare is overburdening communities by keeping parents out of the workforce. Child Care Aware of America has addressed these burdens and barriers through our public policy work, much of which Jay has already shared. Many states could not effectively meet these requirements that were stated in the all-important Child Care Development Block Grant. Therefore, the advocacy community did rally, and the $5.8 billion that Jay shared about new funding importantly supported our work forward. While the majority of this new discretionary funding was dedicated for the Child Care Development Block Grant, other critical programs that support child care, including Head Start, the Child Care Access Means Parents in School, and the federal after-school program 21st Century Community Learning Centers, also received a portion of this funding. American families are in crisis. They are in crisis. And in order to help them and relieve the burden of unaffordable child care, we have to prioritize affordable child care for all families, no matter where they are, in every state and in every community. Today we have the opportunity to speak to the data. That's important. To speak to the statistics. That's important. But most important and most critically, we need to hear the very real personal impact of the statistics that we're describing today. So I have the honor to introduce you to Jessica Raven, a DC mom and advocate who is living this battle every day. She is here to share her story, and we're so pleased to invite her to the podium. Jessica, talking about her son, daughter Max.
Thank you. I'm Jessica Raven. I'm the mom of a 4.5-year-old who I call Max, but wants to be referred to as Annie Rapunzel moving forward. So it's funny, every time I try to do childcare advocacy, I find myself in a childcare crisis. It happens less often now that my daughter's in elementary school, but today she was sick. So I was very lucky and grateful that Child Care Aware dispatched a volunteer so that I could be here today. So childcare has been one of the, I'm a young single mother, and I always knew that parenting would be hard, right? What I didn't know was that navigating and affording quality, reliable childcare was going to be the hardest part of parenting. I live in DC, where we have the highest childcare costs in the country. It's roughly $23,000 a year for 0 to 3-year-olds, and also the highest housing costs in the country. So one of my big challenges is trying to both afford the cost of housing and the cost of childcare at the same time as a single parent. In the first 2 years of my child's life, I spent more on childcare than on anything else, housing, food, all of my other expenses combined. I had a 9-to-5 job where I made okay money, and I wasn't eligible for any subsidies or any support, but I also could barely afford all of my expenses, all of the expenses that I needed to take on to take care of my family. And so I was spending about $1,500 a month, more than my rent, to make sure that my child was cared for while I was at work. I tried picking up side jobs, so I was working in a restaurant for a little while, but then I just ended up in this catch-22 where if I wanted to do any additional work, I still needed childcare. I still needed to pay for childcare. I still needed to coordinate childcare. It was impossible. I eventually found a job with a more flexible schedule, so I was working more nights and weekends when daycare centers aren't open, but I was able to spend daytime with my child, and then at night and on the weekends when I was working, I would have like 3 different childcare providers, 3 different babysitters who would step in. I wasn't working enough hours, or I didn't have a or reliable enough schedule that I could provide somebody with a normal work schedule. So it was mostly whenever folks were available. Now I'm fortunate that my child is in elementary school. DC does have universal pre-K for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. It has been life-changing. I always tell friends now I feel rich. What do I spend all my money on? I've spent a lot of time recuperating from the costs of paying for childcare in those first few years, but have wanted to make sure that this is continues to be a top priority, because people are going to keep having children. This has been a problem for eternity. It needs to be a top priority. Childcare is a reproductive justice issue, it's an economic justice issue, it's a racial justice issue, and a gender justice issue. It is a top priority for working families, and it needs to be a top priority for our legislators too. So I'm so glad that we're all here today to work to pass real quality childcare legislation. Another thing that I'm working on that I wanted to share is I'm on the Universal Child Care for DC Coalition, where we have a bill in the DC Council that would make child care subsidies available to more families, increase the pay of child care workers, many of whom are parents themselves, and cap out the amount of a family's income that can go towards child care costs. So it's a comprehensive legislation that understands that it's not only about making child care more affordable for families, but also making it a sustainable income for workers who are also often working families. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. That was great. And now I'm going to introduce our Senior Director of Research at Child Care America, Dr. Deanne Dobbins, and she's going to kind of provide in detail the findings of this report and summarize it all for you. So Deanne, again, is our Senior Director of Research at Child Care America. She leads a team of excellent researchers and who work closely with the policy staff and align research reports with our organization's strategic goals, including obviously our well-known cost of care report and other reports critical of examining the child care landscape in America, as well as, in addition to that, as well as reports on child care supply, demand, licensing, and affordability. Dr. Dobbins has over 15 years of research, evaluation, and technical assistance experience related to the well-being and stability of children and families placed at risk. She has broad experience in the areas of early child education, mental health of young children, obviously child care, military families, and vulnerable children and families. Please welcome Deanne.
Thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate your introduction. And I really appreciate Jess telling her story. I sit here with my staff and we pour through the numbers and come up with statistics and rankings, but it's really nice to also hear the real life stories of parents going through the things that we talk about in our data. So again, thanks. One of the things that we talk about at Child Care America, our vision and our mission is about making sure that children have access to quality, affordable child care. And so we'll be talking a lot about cost today, but I wanted to start off by really emphasizing the point that it's not just about cost, but it's about making sure that children have access to the quality piece of child care. Just to level set, the importance of quality child care is really critical. There's a lot of things that we know from the research about having quality child care and having children in quality child care settings. We know that it's critical for all of us. It's not just critical for the children, but also for our businesses, for our providers, and for our community as a whole. For children in general, we know that there's lots of research to show that the long-term outcomes for children who've been in quality child care is really, they're really great outcomes. They're less likely to have health issues. They're more likely to do well academically and have less of a need for remedial education. Less likely to have all kinds of issues around academics. There's lasting effects too. Some of those some of those children that they've been studying since the 60s and 70s are now my age, and they're more likely to be employed, less likely to be involved in the juvenile justice system. So there's lots of information from the research around the return on investment for investing in these children. When you start as early as 0, the younger you start, the better the return on investment. You have folks out there who talk about it can be as high as 18%, and you can't do better than that when you invest in stocks. So it's a really important investment, and it pays off in the end. Now, we also know that not only are children affected by being in quality care, but if parents can't find quality care, businesses suffer, and so do parents. So from the employer side, they're really losing about $4 billion a year. That's the national average. But we also have some statistics from states that are looking at the return on investment and what happens when you have child care breakdowns at the state level. So for instance, Louisiana has found that businesses lose about $1.1 billion in the state when there are child care breakdowns. That can be as simple as the kind of thing that happened to Jessica today. I don't have a place to take my child, but I need to do this work. We also know that when parents, especially low-income parents and women, have access to assistance, they're more likely to stay on the job, less likely to have turnover. Businesses are more likely to have parents that are retained in their system. We also really know that about the fact that working mothers want to return back to work within 8 weeks or even earlier. Some of them have to. It's really important that we think about paid family leave. Most women don't have paid family leave, and we at Child Care of America think of paid family leave as a kind of child care. If you can spend more time with your child, not have to pay that expensive infant toddler care, which we know is most expensive. It's a really nice way to support the parents of our youngest children. There's also inequitable access to early childhood care education, especially quality care. Subsidies are wonderful. We're very happy that there's been expanded money for Child Care Development Block Grant, but it's still not enough to reach our most vulnerable children. 1 in 6 kids, or 1 in 6 families that are eligible for subsidies aren't getting them. Only 1 in 6 are getting them, I'm sorry. So we talk about in the report all the different types of families that are most vulnerable. So when you get a chance, check that out. It's a nice way to kind of understand the landscape of child care. So we talk about women in the workforce and their needs. We talk about parents who need non-standard hours. You heard a little bit about that today from Jessica. We talk about parents who are students, parents who are trying to better their lives and do better and get degrees and make more money, but can't because they can't afford to send their children to child care while they get their education. Families with low income have extremely hard time with access as well as affording child care. Families with an infant toddler care is the most expensive and can be difficult to access. We've done a special series around mapping supply and demand for infants and toddlers in 4 states. So it's on our website. It's called Mapping the Gap, and you'll be able to see kind of at least where it's happening in those 4 states, and we suspect in other states around having problems accessing infant toddler care. And then finally, we know a lot about the fact that millennials are having trouble affording child care. They're coming out of school with tremendous debt. They've got lots of bills, child care being one of them. So some are delaying childbirth. Some who have children are really struggling to pay for care. We have a millennial map where we look at the cost of care for this particular population, also on our website, and you'll see that the situation for them is even more dire than the general population. So one of the things when people hear how high the cost of child care is, we always hear is, oh, so are the providers, are the teachers making lots of money? Or, is this a business I need to go in since it's so expensive and parents are paying so much? And then they're surprised to hear that providers and teachers aren't paid that much. Most of them are literally being paid poverty wages. About I think the national average is about $10.72 or so. So many of them are eligible for all kinds of assistance, food stamps and child care assistants themselves. And many cannot afford to care for their children. So the reason why it's so difficult for providers to be able to pay for child care and to be able to make a living is because it's a pretty labor-intensive industry. You would not want to send your child, your infant especially, to a place where there are 10, 11 babies in one child care provider. So because we know that it's important to have lower ratios for infants and toddlers, we need to have more staff available, more trained staff available, and it just costs a lot of money. So when you get a chance, please take a look at our work around the child care workforce. One of the things that we partnered with an organization, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, I'll show that video, but we did try to answer the question about since child care is so expensive, why do providers make so little? Another thing we talk about in the report is the importance of these child care resource and referral agencies. They're available, they touch 47 states, they're available in 47 states. They're agencies that provide a lot of resources for child care providers, for parents, as well as the business community. So in our paper, we talk a lot about all the different tasks and the different resources that child care resource and referral agencies provide, and how they touch parents, how they support businesses in helping parents and their workers, and how they work closely with providers. There's lots of different examples in there. And we're really excited about this work because we feel like child care resource and referral agencies are already out there. They've been doing this work. They need to be fully funded in order to continue to do this fabulous work. This is just an example of how CCR&Rs are part of this system in child care and how they need to be fully funded. The Child Care Development Block Grant authorizes the Child Care Development Fund, as you probably know, and those funds include information about what the subsidies should be, regulations, and information about how you improve quality child care. Then each state gets those dollars and they have to create a plan about how they're going to use those dollars. And the plans and the legislation specifically lay out the role that child care resource and referral agencies play and how they can support families and providers. So we really want to emphasize the fact that these are organizations that can be really important to the child care system. Again, a couple of different stats that are kind of critical. When you think of child care resource and referral, the referral part is what a lot of people think about. So 96% of our CCR&Rs are helping families find child care. 82% of them, especially the local ones, are providing basic health and safety training for providers. So a lot of their work is around training, and the health and safety trainings are really a new part of the law from 2014, and really states are looking for, in order to meet the law, they've got to do those trainings, and CCR&Rs are a perfect place for that to happen. They're already doing some of that work. 92% of the CCR&Rs are participating in all kinds of partnerships and initiatives to identify strategies to address the gaps in services that we are finding when we're doing our mapping around supply and demand. They're helping states think about how they can build supply, how they can take the data that's available at the state level and understand where the gaps are and identify resources. And as you can see on the side of the slide, all of the different things that child care resource and referral agencies do to inform decision making. I thought this statistic at the end was pretty interesting. 9 out of 10 of the child care resource and referral agencies recruit new child care programs. And that's really important because we know that there's some supply issues around child care and the fact that many parents can't even find or access child care. But only 44% of them are receiving public funding to do that work. So, wanted to just give you an overview today about our new report. This is our 12th edition. Some of the things that you'll find in the report is not just the actual report. There's lots of pieces that go along with it, and we're really excited and proud of those pieces. So the report does summarize all the costs and affordability for different ages and different types of programs across the country and for different states. So those are the things that you're used to kind of seeing, all the appendices and all of the information and the ranking. We talk a lot about some of the things I talked about before I got to the slide around the return on investment, the quality, how it's important to have quality for providers, for programs, for the general public, and for businesses, and how they all kind of interconnect. We talk about the role of CCR&Rs, like I just did. One thing that we're really excited about is we have some case studies this year where we were able to work closely with some of our members to highlight issues that are happening in their state. So we have some regional case studies, and we have some county level examinations. And then finally, of course, you don't want to just hear about the problem, you want to hear what's the solution, and we have some policy recommendations, both for what people can do, what federal and state level folks can do to help parents and providers, and also what parents can do to advocate for the change. So as I mentioned, there's lots of offerings that are part of the report, so not just the report, but you've got a pretty large set of appendices that has everything you want to know about cost and affordability for every state and all the rankings. We also have an interactive map where if folks aren't interested in reading this wonderful report like I am and get excited and geeked about all the data, you can go to our map and click on the map on the different states and get the same kind of information without going through the entire report. We also have the county level information that I was sharing with you. We have print-friendly county level supplements so that you can get a sense of what's going on in 10 different states who were willing to partner with us and give us county level data. I think that's really important because when we talk about the cost of care at the state level a lot and the affordability, we're using state median income, and we're looking at the average across an entire state. And so sometimes variances of the cost kind of get smoothed out. But when you're able to take deeper dives and look at county level information, you can really see what's driving the cost in a state, where there are significant problems, where there might be places that states want to target their resources. We talk a lot about the CCR&R system. We have a tip sheet for parents, like how do you find affordable quality child care? What are the steps you should take? And then we have a social media share kit that we'll talk a little bit about. So here are some features of the interactive cost map. So when you go to our website, you'll see our cost of child care map. It's color coded so that the green states are like those states are saying that 7 to 10% of a family's income goes toward the cost of infant care in a center, and this is for married families. The blue ones are for 10 to 12, and the dark blue ones are for over 12%. So you can kind of get a picture of where things are, but then you can also go straight to the state, click on it, and you'll get what you'll see is you'll see a pop-up that gives you sort of an overview. So you can see that in this state it's about 12% of a family's income goes to child care, but you'll also see the exact number, the dollar amount that you get. You can click again where it says view more information, and you will get the sheet that's right next to the map. So you'll get all kinds of data around child care for each state. And if you're very interested and want to take that information and print it off, if you see at the bottom of this sheet, you'll see that green button and it says download this information. You download that information and you get a nice printable PDF that has the same information that you can carry with you and take. We do the same thing for the county level mapping. We have 9 states that are represented in the county level mapping. So again, you can, when you go to a state, if you double click, if it's a state that we've identified, there's 9 states on the map, and it tells you which ones when you go on. If you're interested in the county level information, you can do the double click. You'll get the map, then you can double click where the county that you're interested in, you'll get the sheet at the bottom, and then if you're interested in downloading it, you'll get the sheet at the bottom, but then you can also look at our county level supplements, which are all together. Again, as I mentioned, we did some regional examination of child care. Two that I wanted to point out, we did an examination of costs in Baltimore City versus Baltimore County. Two areas that are right beside each other, and you would think that they'd have similar concerns and issues, but really two different places for a child to live. What we found, and you can go through it and read the story about it, but basically what we found is that in the city, people are paying less for child care. In the county, they pay more, but it's less affordable when you get to the city limits. And those communities and those parents are also the same parents that have a lot of other issues, and we tried to lay out the different other kind of health statistics and neighborhood statistics that are also kind of putting those neighborhoods at risk. We also did some examination of costs in the DC metro area. As Jess mentioned, we've always kind of looked at DC in general, but this year we wanted to look at DC and the surrounding areas, and to see, when we look at Virginia, it's not as bad as DC. When you, like I said, when you look at the entire state, or when you look at Maryland, it's not as bad when you look at the entire state. But we wanted to look around the surrounding areas and the surrounding counties, and what we found was that it's pretty expensive for the entire region. Virginia is most similar to DC, and when you look at the Maryland counties, it looks like it's more affordable, and it is, but remember a lot of those counties are large, and so again, you're spreading out and smoothing out the costs, the variances and differentials. So what we would love to do in the future is maybe even look deeper at the zip code level or at the neighborhood level, census tract level, to really look at the areas right that abut the DC area to see if they're also very similar. I'm running out of time, but just so you know, there's a lot of information about our methodology. We work closely with our data contacts throughout the states to get this data. They provide us with price information. When we don't get information from states, we have to use, we have to calculate the price based on the cost of inflation. So we also, this is our second year doing a national number, and it's very similar to last year. We do it 3 different ways, and if you're interested in that, you can look at our report to see how we do it. But in general, it's ranging from about 9% of a parent's income all the way up, $9,000 to about $9,600 per year. And that's, again, an average, not taking into account all of the variability. But the thing to keep in mind is that for married couples, it's about 11% of their income. And for single parent families, it's even more, it's about 37% of their income. We have all the rankings for all of the states that, if you're interested, some of them, the top 10 for each of the different types of age groups are in the report, but the appendices have everything else you'd ever want to read about costs. We also talk a lot about how child care is, the cost is comparable to many of our household expenses, and how it's just very unaffordable, and it rivals some of the other budget items that parents have to pay. This is the report, the piece that I was talking about, how many of our child care providers are being paid very low incomes. They are not able, and themselves are not even able to pay for child care. So there's a lot of information about that. I won't do the video today, but I wanted to share with you that we did do a video. It's available on our YouTube channel, so if you go to Child Care of America's YouTube channel, you can check out our video where we worked with the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment to help people understand why providers make so little, yet child care costs so much. We do it through telling a story of a family who's going through the issue, and talk about what's happening in the child's center and in his classroom, and how there's all kinds of things that go into the cost of care. And by the time you do all that, there's very little left for salaries. And so it's a really interesting story to tell, and a great way to show why this is important. So when you get a chance, check out our video. The takeaways, and I think I've talked about many of them, But, you know, quality, accessible, affordable childcare affects everyone. It affects the parents, it affects the children, it affects our businesses and our larger community. It's unaffordable in all of our states, including DC. The national average is pretty high, and as I mentioned, it's about 11% of our family's income. We really want to push this piece about digging deep and looking at local costs, because we really feel like that's the best way to understand cost of childcare. And we think that childcare in general, we're in a crisis. The cost for childcare, we're in a crisis, and it really deserves public investment to not only fully fund childcare development block grant and the other funding sources that provide supports for families, but to help support the providers, help support CCR&Rs, and help support the professional development, all the different issues that are important in terms of quality childcare. Just wanted to point out, I don't know if you are familiar with our report from previous years. We used to always, our report was called Parents and the High Cost of Childcare. This year we had a play on words. We realized that parents, although they do bear the brunt of the cost of care, they shouldn't have to. And the new report that came out from the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine talked about the fact that it's not sustainable to expect parents to pay for the brunt of care. And what we decided as an organization is that we think that we should change the focus so that folks realize it takes all of us to do this work. So it's the U.S. and the high cost of childcare, but like a play on the word U.S. so that it's about all of us doing this work. So when you get a chance, take a look at some of our tactics and strategies for financing childcare. Some really interesting things happening at the state and local level. I'm going to turn it over to Chrissy and Jay.
Thank you, Dion. Obviously, we want to be mindful of everyone's time. We're going to spend a few moments to kind of outline our policy recommendations, and then, of course, we want to hear from all of you if you have any questions. So before we transition into our recommendations, I just want to take a moment to introduce our Director of Advocacy, Chrissy West. She oversees our Child Care Works initiative. And actually, Chrissy, if you just want to say a few words about your work and how it aligns with our mission.
Sure. Thanks, Jay. So, like Jay said, my name is Chrissy West. I'm the Director of Advocacy at CCAoA. And my role is to work with a new movement that we've started just a couple years ago called Child Care Works. It's the organization's advocacy arm. It's a movement to basically work toward quality, affordable child care for all families, regardless of income level, where they live. And it's actually really important work that we tie to our policy agenda. So Jay and I work very closely together on that.
Yes, we do, and I always appreciate the great team that we have at Child Care Resource America. And Chrissy, thank you very much. And Chrissy and her Child Care Works team, they're critical in helping us push our message to the state level since we work very closely with the CCR&R network. So with that, to kind of just circle back to Dion's comments that our recommendations here really are out there to help children, parents, and providers, but also to support the child care workforce, especially the CCR&R network. Now we have several pages of recommendations. We're not going to go through all of them. Just be mindful of everyone's time. What we did is we kind of condensed them down into 4 categories. Mostly federal recommendations, but there are some state level ones as well. Probably the biggest recommendation we have based off of this report, and also our other initiatives through our advocacy team, is continuing to invest and expand CCDBG, and especially to support the CCR&R network. As we mentioned at the beginning, this year was a big year for investment in child care programming. Unfortunately, it was only a 2-year deal, and now that the FY 2019 budget's been completed, we're going to head into next year with the discretionary spending caps being reset. Unfortunately, we think that the new funding thresholds should remain. We actually also believe that there should be more. There needs to be more support for states, but also more support for children, families, and of course the child care workforce. So obviously maintaining a strong investment in this program is critical. We also believe that it should be strengthened and expanded, and there is a bill out there that would do just that. It's called the Child Care for Working Families Act. sponsored by Senator Patty Murray of Washington and Congressman Bobby Scott of Virginia. It would help address the current early learning and care crisis by ensuring that no family earning less than 150% of a state median income pays more than 7% of their income on child care. It would also greatly expand efforts to bring the CCR&R workforce to as a key player and help them expand both at the local and regional levels. And in addition to direct programming, there's also other ways we believe that there are ways to just improve the child care infrastructure itself. Yes, CCDBG is the biggest program, but child care kind of encompasses the entire early learning landscape, especially in federal programming. That includes Head Start, Early Head Start, preschool development grants, 21st Century Community Learning Centers, and other critical programs. In addition to strengthening those programs, we encourage improvements to what's called the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or TANF. Most importantly, we believe that TANF should be improved, that it aligns with CCDBG, as well as streamline TANF eligibility to line up with 12-month redetermination periods established in the 2014 CCDBG Act. We also believe that the administration can play a role in this by working with the Department of Health and Human Services and the Office of Child Care to assist in collecting data for TANF-funded child care programs as is currently required under CCDBG. In addition to the child care workforce and federal programming, we also believe there are initiatives out there that can help address the needs of parents. Which is also important when trying to confront the child care crisis in this country. And there's several ways this can be done. It can be used, obviously, through programs like Head Start, CCDBG, but there's also other ways, especially the tax code. Simplify the process where families could qualify for tax incentives. There is actually there's legislation out there. It's called the Promoting Affordable Child Care for Everyone Act, or PACE Act of 2017, where it would make the child independent care tax credit not only to expand it but make it refundable. It is sponsored by Congressman Kevin Yoder of Kansas and Senator Angus King of Maine. I do stress this is a bipartisan initiative, and it would help provide families relief by offsetting their child care costs. In addition, there are currently one in four undergraduate college students are also a parent, and we think that more should be done to ensure that parents who are also college students who attend full or part-time have options available to them. And there is a program out there. It's called the Child Care Access Means Parents in Schools initiative, and where it provides child care services for qualifying students. There is a legislation out there sponsored by Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois and Congresswoman Catherine Clark of Massachusetts that would make this program permanent. And in addition, this is also one of the programs that received a significant bump in funding from $15 million annually to $50. And in addition to tax incentives and educational incentives, we also think that parents should be supported as the first teacher and really focus on family-friendly policies that allow parents to spend time with their children without sacrificing their jobs or careers. And there is legislation out there, in particular called the Family Act, that would help provide full support for promising programs that promote parents as a child's first teacher. And lastly, there are actions that can be taken at the state level, specifically with state legislatures and administrators that can work together to improve the quality of care, but also to support the workforce. This could include providing resources for planning and developing needs, analyzing the child care capacity, the availability of high quality care for working families, ensure that stakeholders, including CCR&Rs and other state community level organizations, are part of planning sessions involved in child care delivery at state and at the local levels. Obviously, work to improve the workforce compensation, reduce barriers in the subsidy process, authorize pilot programs to explore strategies to meet the demands in high poverty and rural communities, and help close the gaps of the supply of child care. There are a number of technical assistance centers out there throughout the country. So we believe that they should be targeted to, with the lowest levels of compensation, help providers maximize their budgets and keep the doors open, engage state and community level organizations to identify the most effective methods of outreach and dissemination to providers in the region. There's been a number of state legislatures have passed their own child care bills to help improve access to care and to align with the 2014 law. So those are kind of the very, very short version of our policy recommendations. We have a much more in-depth, multi-page explanation in our report. So with that, we do have a few minutes. So we would like to open it up for questions. We have a couple of our colleagues out here that have microphones. And so if you have a question to ask us or anyone on the panel, please raise your hand or stand up. Anyone?
If you don't have a question, I have some asks for you. As Director of Advocacy, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't. So if you are staff for a congressional office, we would really, really like, you heard Dr. Dobbins talk about all the work that CCR&R is doing in the community. We want you to use them for constituent services if you have to refer parents out to them. They are known in the community. They have resources that can help parents with any number of services. But also to use them as experts in this field. If you have questions on the report and you're working in your community or in your state on legislation, these are people that you can go to for stories, for resources, for information, and they actually help supplement a lot of the data that our research team works on. So please use them, refer parents to them, you can refer other staff to them if they need information. If you are following along at home, or if you are in the room and you are a parent, whether you're a staffer or not, if you have children and you have a story to share, and you're why we do this work. So, I mean, Jessica is here, stories like hers that keep us going every day, and really kind of push us to try to solve this problem and make sure that all families have access to quality, affordable child care. So we want to hear your stories. If you are not currently working for a member of Congress, we want you to share your stories, not just with us, but with your members too. That's really the way that brings all of this data and this research, all the hard work that our research team does, it brings it home for them and makes it real. You guys are constituents, you're voters, and they represent you. And they want to hear how this goes for you and how you're affected by these high costs. So please share your stories.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Chrissy. That was great. So again, are there any questions? Well, like I want to echo what Chrissy said, we want to hear your stories. I just guess we're not going to hear them right now. So, all right, with that, again, I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming today, and please give a round of applause to our panel. As always, for your continued continued support for child care in the early childhood community, we are grateful for all the hard work that you do with you and your colleagues. Want to really extend my appreciation. We want to recognize and extend our policy and research and communications and Child Care Works team who spent a lot of hours putting this event together, and as well as with the release of the report. So again, thank you very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of your week.